Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the 13 O'Clock podcast. Today we are doing kind of an eerie espionage theme. Spy shit. Spooky spy shit.
Yep, and I'm just going to sit here vaping along for the ride.
Like you do. So we have like kind of a bunch of, really 3 topics that are sort of related.
Yeah. And
the first thing we wanted to talk about, we're going to do some like weird, creepy, like possibly spy related unsolved murders, like after, later in the show. But the first thing we're going to talk about is number stations.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. You hear a lot of stuff about number stations like on YouTube and other YouTube channels. And if you read the comments, a lot of people kind of reading into what a numbers channel is or what a number station is. But I actually kind of have some personal experience with encoding and decoding when I was in the military. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell them what a number station is.
Well, the thing is, I think the reason that people are so fascinated by them is they're so creepy. I mean, and they're creepy sounding. Some of them are really creepy sounding. And actually, I have a few examples of them that I'm gonna put in here.
Yeah, show them what a number station sounds like.
Yeah, you want to just okay.
Yeah, show them a few. Show them a few of them.
All right, so we're gonna pause for a second, and I'll play you a couple examples of them. Oh, and these are shout out to the Conant Project on archive.org. He has like 150 of these different ones. If you want to go listen to it, I'll put a link, in the show notes.
Yeah, some guys collect these things.
Yeah, because they're fascinating. And some of them are super weird. So, okay, so here's a few examples. So listen to a few examples of these. Super, super creepy. Okay?
5, 5, 2, 6, 1. 3, 2, 4, 2, 7. 4, 4, 4, 0, 5. 5, 7, 4, 9, 9. 0, 3, 8, 1, 3. 9, 7, 6, 6, 5. 2, 1, 6, 9, 6. 9, 9, 6, 7, 7. 8, 0, 7, 8, 5. 1, 8, 8, 0, 3. 8, 4, 1, 9, 8. 9, 2, 8, 1, 3. End.
And that's them.
Yeah, creepy, right?
Yeah.
So, and I specifically picked like super creepy ones.
Okay.
Because I think even though I know what they are, they're still creepy sounding.
I kind of know how they work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, basically the history of them, I mean, you can look it up on Wikipedia and it'll kind of tell you more about all this kind of stuff. They basically think they started in World War I. And there are, I mean, they have them from pretty much everywhere. And actually, I think some of them are still going.
Yeah.
They're basically, it's basically thought that it's governments or it's like, you know.
Sometimes fishing industries and things like that.
They're giving encoded information
to specific people.
To specific people.
Yeah.
Specific could be foreign agents.
Yeah.
You know, could be anything like that. And there actually are a couple of famous ones. Probably the most famous one is the Lincolnshire Poacher.
Yeah.
Which came out of the UK, which I think is defunct now. But
that was what, 60s?
Yeah, well, actually, that went on for a really long time. It might have gone on to the 80s, actually. I have to check.
That's Cold War stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of Cold War stuff. They called it that because the tone that would alert that would alert the person was the folk song, the Lincolnshire Poacher, like 2 bars of it. And, there's other kind of famous ones like Russian Man and stuff like that. Like I said, if you go on the Conant Project on archive.org, he's got like a whole shit ton of them. But, so Tom here was in the Army.
Yeah. I did several different jobs in the Army. And one of the things that I did was I was an infantry scout for the 1st and the 327th Infantry Battalion. And as a scout, we carried radios, and we carried a primitive Vietnam era radio called the PRC 77, which was really super low tech. And there was ways to encrypt your messages, but any kind of mechanical or computerized encryption can eventually be cracked. The best way to encode something is to encode something using a real primitive encryption method. Now, when you're hearing those ringtones on a number station, that could mean a couple of different things, and it's all pre-arranged between the sender, who's kind of like the communications officer, and the person who is to receive it. Let's say it's an agent. The ringtones could mean, well, each one's going to be different. Each number station will be different. Every company, every organization that does this is going to have a slightly different way of doing it. And that adds to the security. So this is not a cookie cutter method. But you can send a ringtone, usually just to let the agents know that, yes, it is the sender that you think it is. So in other words, this is how they do it. They will take an agent and they say, we're going to send you, let's say Cuba, okay? And you're going to be a spy. We can't send you there with a secret radio, because if they find you with that radio, they'll know you are a spy. And we can't send you there with a code book, because then they'll know you're a spy. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you there with a book on birds, or a book on, it might even just be the Bible. It could be that simple. And then every day at, let's say, 3 o'clock, we're going to send a transmission. All right. You will recognize us by the ringtone and the frequency. This is the frequency. Check us on, 144 hertz. I don't know how that part of it works. So he dials in, he hears the ringtone at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's going to be a long series of numbers. Now, the series of numbers is going to come in packets. It may be a packet of 4. It might be a packet of 5 numbers, like 1, 3, 2, 9, 2. That's 5 numbers. And then it repeats another one, 7, 6, 2, 9, 3. Well, that packet of numbers is usually a coordinate inside the book they gave you. They've told you it might be chapter 1, okay? 3rd page, 4th paragraph, 2nd line, 3rd word to the right. And that points to a word. And that word might be the, or it might be and, or it might be boxcar. It could be anything, okay? So they're going to give you long streams of numbers. So at 3 o'clock, you write all the numbers down. And then you go to your book, and you try to find all the words, the coordinates of all those words. Now, the transmission block that they send you is always going to be exactly the same length. That way there's no way to decode it. Like the person who's listening to it doesn't know if it's a long message or a short message or whatever. Every message is exactly the same length. So when the guy goes to translate it, it might be gobbledygook. And then halfway down through the packet, a sentence appears. And then after that, more gobbledygook. Now, the random gobbledygook, there may be encoded messages still in there. Okay? It's just that it's for another agent working in the same company. It's not for that guy. It's not for that guy. So the other agent might he may have been given a different book. It might be an instruction manual. It could be anything, something that you will never know that that's a code book. He might have a book on helicopters. So each agent gets only the message that were intended for him. All right. And that way, if one agent is captured, he can't spill the beans. He has no idea what the other agents are talking about, what their mission is, and there's no way under interrogation to find these other guys or find out what's happening. You know what I mean? In that country, in espionage wise. So it's a one-way transmission. It's just sending an agent a packet of information. Now, if the packet of information runs too short, they just fill it with gobbledygook. Now, I told you that agent is waiting for 3 o'clock to hear the message.
Right.
But the thing is that the radio traffic is always the same. That radio station will broadcast a message every hour on the hour or every 3 hours. It's going to be preset.
Yeah.
That way, the enemy does not hear any decrease or increase in radio traffic.
Right, it'll be consistent.
It's consistent.
Right.
That way, they can't sit there and wait and hear a transmission. Maybe there hasn't been a transmission in 3 days, and then the enemy gives a transmission. They go, wait a minute, something's happening.
Oh, shit, something's
happening.
on.
Raise the alert, you know?
Right.
And, or they might say, why is it whenever we move our nuclear material, a transmission happens? So we've been infiltrated. So that's why. So it's constant barrage of messages. Now, the other messages on other hours, they may have information in them too, but they may be for other agents.
Right.
Not you as a single agent in this country.
Right.
So there could be a constant stream of information and updates.
Yeah.
But each agent is probably only given 1, maybe 2 windows to listen for in a day.
Right.
I think I explained that correctly.
And really, and didn't you say that done correctly, it's essentially an unbreakable code?
Unbreakable.
Because no one knows.
There's no code that can be cracked because it's not a digital code. It's an analog code, and the agents have been primed and instructed in person, orally, by the controller.
Right.
And there's no code book. It's just a random book.
It's just a random book.
It might be the Bible. It might be an instructions on how to fix a tractor.
Yeah.
It could be anything. And if that guy ever gets captured, there's no way of knowing that he's an agent and that he has a code book. There's no code book.
Right.
They're going to turn a book into a code book.
Yeah. Which is actually pretty fucking genius when you think about it.
Yeah. And the key to crack that code is in the head of that particular agent, and he can only crack the messages that were intended for him.
Yeah,
so he has no code, no useful code to crack any other messages.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's still spooky though.
Yeah.
They still sound spooky.
And it's foolproof. And it's like something out of the video game Fallout. It's real. You can do it at the end of the world in an apocalyptic event. As long as you have a radio transmitter powerful enough, you can get a secret message to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And some of them, they call them all number stations, but some of them actually don't use numbers. Some of them use like encoded tones. Mm-hmm. Or there's one called backwards music, but it's actually not backwards music. It's some kind of encoded tones.
Yeah, it could be several different things. They may be numbers. All right, but then the numbers are scrambled.
Okay, I gotcha.
They're scrambled by an electronic scrambler.
Okay.
But that would require the agent to have some kind of an electronic device to descramble them. Now that electronic device may be inside of an embassy, because a lot of these messages are actually, if you were to trace the source, come from an embassy. There's an embassy communications intelligence officer who would, if it was an American station, it would be CIA.
Yeah.
All right. If it was an old Soviet one, it would be KGB.
Right.
And now the guy who's sending the messages, he may be in an embassy or a consulate, and they may transmit from that consulate, but a lot of times not. They're going to transmit from a remote antenna, maybe from a ship, maybe from somewhere else. They have ways to do it. It's all spookcraft.
Yeah.
Right. Spookcraft. But most of the radio stations, I think, were well known to be on certain frequencies, and the spy agencies didn't bother jamming them, because if you jam their signals, they will jam yours. So you'll lose you lose contact with all your agents.
Right.
So there was kind of a gentleman's agreement between in the intelligence communities that let's all talk.
Yeah.
Basically, it's better that we all talk instead of none of us talking to our agents. So they just let it go.
Oh.
Yeah. Now most of the messages.
That's very civilized.
Yeah. Well, they have to do their jobs.
Well, yeah.
All right. And what's funny though is that a lot of the messages, if you were to probably encode or decode them, or excuse me, if you were to decode them, they're probably not too exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, usually, wouldn't it just be something like, hey, go to this place at this time, or do this and that?
It might be something along the lines of, keep trying, stuff like that. Is mission complete yet? Return to base. Mission's over. Things like that.
Probably very rarely you get that, hey, bump off this dude.
No, very rarely. Most of the time they're talking to guys who are civilians that have been taken into the CIA.
Right.
And these civilians might work in industries, and they're working in an industry inside of a foreign company in another place, right?
Okay.
And they may be talking about a dinner party that's happening that night because that agent is trying to find out, some detail about some technology or something about the stock market. There's no telling. It could be anything.
It could be anything.
It could be about recruiting a foreign national into the intelligence group to bribe him to get a secret, something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on each situation.
Yeah. But, like I said, it's actually a really interesting topic. I mean, I think a lot of people kind of know about it now because I think they made that movie a couple years ago called The Number Station that was kind of about that.
Oh, I didn't see it.
And yeah, I didn't see it either, but I think John Cusack was in it. And actually the funny thing is that sometimes if the number stations are broadcasting on random frequencies, sometimes they turn up like in places where they're not supposed to be. Like they'll actually accidentally like broadcast on a frequency that a lot of people hear. Like I think one time the BBC like had one of their ones kind of bleeding into the frequency, and people were calling to complain. What are all these numbers? Somebody's talking numbers over my TV show.
Well, that's one of the controllers saying, "Look, I'm going to send you a message. It's going to be on this frequency. It'll be tomorrow or next week on a Thursday at 3:00 in the morning." And then they send it. So it was something prearranged. The guy meant to receive it was listening on that channel, waiting for it to appear. Maybe they didn't check whether or not that channel was.
That's what they were saying. Like sometimes they don't just check. Random. They just pick a random frequency, and sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's the BBC.
Well, it seems random to the outside world, but it wasn't random to the guys who were sending it and receiving it.
Right.
But yeah, so that's how number stations work. Now it's not always. My understanding is it's not always intelligence agencies. It can also be like commercial fishing groups. They're trying to contact another one of their boats. Hey, the fish are over here. Get over here
and
quick.
They don't want other people to know about it because then everybody
goes there.
That's
so
actually,
they can do it too.
Man. I think we should start communicating like that.
Well, the fishing,
just in case.
You got to understand a lot of these commercial fishermen and anybody on the sea, a lot of them have naval backgrounds.
Well, yeah.
So they learned that kind of stuff when they were in the Navy. So they're using those tricks.
That's pretty awesome.
Army infantry used those tricks. Now I think it's all kind of basically high-tech cell phones because they're real hard to crack. I kind of wonder if they... I mean, like I said, some of the like bleed-throughs have happened in like the 2000s. Mm-hmm. So apparently some of them are still broadcasting. But that's intelligence agencies.
Yeah, so that's going to be...
See, the problem with using... encode decode like we used in the Army back in the 90s. The problem with that is that it's slow.
Yeah.
So if you're taking fire from the enemy and you're trying
you don't really have time to like look through a book and be like...
you can't encode it because we had a book called the SOI.
We're being shot at, bitches. Yeah, we don't have time for this.
So a lot of that stuff had to be transmitted kind of unsecure. Maybe it was slightly scrambled, but the enemy has descramblers.
Yeah.
But the difference is that in an infantry unit, 90% of the stuff that you're saying over the radio, if the enemy heard it, it's not going to help them. It's not going to change the fact that you're whipping their ass. None of it's really secret. It's just, but the CIA and intelligence works, that's different.
Right.
Because the information in there, you could foil the plans much easier because it's not usually involving gunplay.
Yeah.
They'll just arrest whoever it is you're trying to bribe.
Right.
And they don't want the enemy to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. But, yeah, it looks like from when I was looking up on Wikipedia when I was doing research, they said that actually this year, 2 months ago, actually, July 2016, North Korea has revived their number broadcasts.
Oh, yeah.
After a hiatus of 16 years.
Yeah, they've got agents somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure, I don't know how, it's a one-way communication. You're just sending a message to them. I don't know how responses come back. They may be physical. In some cases, they may have a physical person that person can respond to. In other words, somebody working back at the embassy, they just go back to the embassy and answer, basically. I've heard of stuff like them placing ads in newspapers that are encoded phrases that can be decoded.
Yeah, I've heard about that kind of thing.
But in the modern age, it's probably something done on a computer.
Yeah.
Probably you send a text message that looks very innocuous. Looks like you sent it to your mom or something like that. But actually, it's not. It was an encoded text message to your handler.
You would think, though. I mean, I was saying, the whole radio thing and the code book kind of stuff. It seems very low tech, but in a lot of ways, it seems better.
It's better. It's impossible to crack.
Yeah, because
no
like I
computer
said,
can crack it.
Right, and like I said, sending messages over. Over the internet, over Wi-Fi, things like that. It's really probably not safe in any capacity. No. Even if it's scrambled, even if it's encoded, right. Someone somewhere could break that.
Well, when you could do it over the internet the same way you do it with the number stations. In other words,
true.
It's a sentence, okay,
right.
Or a paragraph, and you read it, and a paragraph has nothing to do with anything, but the person who's receiving it might know that. Through a certain code algorithm, every fourth letter out of there can be combined. In other words, every fourth letter in the entire paragraph can be combined to read something. Right. You understand what I'm talking about? There's a hidden message inside of it. And it's not something that a computer could figure out. It's something that somebody with a mental key in their head could figure out.
Yeah.
Although they have some pretty good AI computers, maybe they could crack that. But the time that you would need to crack a lot of this stuff, the information's is worthless by the time you figure it out.
Right.
And the code's going to change each time. Like, for instance, when I said that the set of numbers might give you the coordinates in a specific book to the word the, correct?
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to be pointing to the same the each time.
Right, I gotcha.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The falls on many different coordinates.
Yeah.
The person who's encoding it is just going through the book, going, where's a the? Oh, there's one, and writing it down. Writing the coordinates down. Okay, where's a word brown? There's one, and just writes that down. Well, brown in that book might be mentioned 6 times.
Right.
You don't know.
Yeah, okay. But, okay, so what I'm going to do now, because we're coming up on 20 minutes, I actually want to play a few more examples for the listeners.
Okay. And
then we will take a break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to talk about 2 really creepy unsolved murders.
Yeah, you briefly told me about these.
That were probably spies. I mean, I don't know what else they could have been. And actually, the first one I'm going to talk about actually also involves a code.
Okay.
With a book. So, and some of y'all might know what I'm talking about because it's kind of well known. The second one I'm talking about is not so well known. So we're going to pause right now, and I'm going to play you some more number stations, and then we're going to take a break, and then we'll be back.
3, 2, 8. 3, 2, 8. 3, 2, 8. 4, 2, 3, 6, 4. 0, 8, 9. 3, 2, 8. 3, 2, 8. 3, 2, 8. 4, 2, 3, 6, 4. 0, 8, 9. 3, 7, 4, 1, 1. 6, 3, 9, 6, 0. 4, 0, 2, 6, 7. 3, 2, 6, 2, 8. 3, 4, 6, 7, 4. 4, 9, 8, 7, 0. 3, 6, 2, 4, 3. 4, 7, 8, 7, 9. 8, 6, 0. 8, 9. 9, 3, 1. 8, 1. 5, 0, 8, 1, 9. 5, 7, 4, 9, 9. 0, 3, 8, 1, 3. 9, 7, 6, 6, 5. 2, 1, 6, 9, 6. 9, 9, 6, 7, 7. 8, 0, 7, 8, 5. 1, 8, 8, 0, 3. 8, 4, 1, 9, 8. 9, 2, 8, 1, 3. I say again. 3, 7, 4, 1, 1. 6, 3, 9, 6, 0. 8, 4, 1, 9, 8. 9, 2, 8, 1, 3. End.
I would like to take a second and thank Subculture Corsets and Clothing for sponsoring Project iRadio and my show. While listening to my podcast, please take a second and visit their website at www.subculturecorsets.com. They carry a wide selection of corsets, rockabilly, gothic, steampunk, and pinup clothing, shoes, and accessories. Again, their website is subculturecorsets.com, or if you're in the Jacksonville, Florida area, stop by their store in the Avenues Mall. And if you like to save money, use the discount code 13o'clock when checking out and save 10% off your entire order. By the way, if you're a curvy girl, Subculture did not forget about you. They carry size 4 to 4X, and guys, they have men's clothing and shoes as well. So go shop at subculturecorsets.com now and use the discount code 13o'clock for a 10% discount. Okay, and we're back.
All right.
So the first thing, actually, I was going to talk about the less well-known case first, but I think I'm going to do this one first because we were talking about codes. And this one has to do with a code.
Okay.
Now, those of you who follow weird shit kind of lore have probably heard of the Somerton Man, also known as the Tamam Shud case, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think it's Persian. This happened in 1948 in December in Australia. Now, there was a man found in Somerton. It's a small beach town. And he was found dead, leaned up against a wall on the beach. There were no signs of struggle. There were no signs of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he didn't look like he'd been beat up. He didn't look like he wasn't stabbed.
No
he wasn't
injury.
shot. No injuries. He had no identification. No wallet, no wedding ring, no name, tags, no nothing. All of the labels had been cut out of his clothing. and actually here was the weird thing, they didn't know if, they thought maybe he had been dumped there, because later when they did the autopsy, they found out that his stomach and his brain and his spleen, I think, were blood engorged, which would indicate some type of poisoning.
Yeah.
But where he was laying on the sand, there was no vomit, there was no sign of that he'd been kicking around or that he was in pain or anything, because usually poisoning is very painful death.
Okay, I'm telling you right. I can tell you right now, he wasn't killed in that location. He was dumped in that
Well,
location.
now see, that's the next thing I was going to say. So that's the first thing the police thought, was that he was dumped there.
Right.
But people, witnesses, the night before, had seen him laying there and had seen him moving. So he was not dead yet. And the coroner said that he hadn't died until 2 a.m. Okay. And people had seen him like the previous evening, like 6 or 7 o'clock, like people had been walking down the beach and they saw him laying there and they just thought he was drunk or sleeping it off. But they said that one of them said, yeah, he moved his arm and he looked like he was moving around, or he was in a different position when they found him. So, like I said, no ID, no nothing. All they found on him, they found a bus ticket from a town called Glenelg, which was another town that wasn't that far away. And, they thought that he had come, on that bus from there. They found a pack of cigarettes, some gum, a comb that had been made in America, and some matches. He also had a cigarette tucked behind one ear and a partially smoked cigarette caught in between his cheek and his shoulder, as if he'd been smoking it when he died.
It's all Australian stuff that he had?
No, it was not. And here's another thing. Okay, now here was the creepiest shit. When they took him away and started examining the body, and they started examining his clothes, in his pants, they found like a little secret pocket that they hadn't seen before. In that pocket was a little piece of rolled up paper. And that paper had 2 words on it, and the words were Tamam Shud.
Okay.
Now, they discovered that it's actually, it was actually the last page of, the well-known book of Persian poetry called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And Tamam Shud means it is finished, or the end. And it was the last page of the book. Okay, so they found that in his pocket. Now, so here's the thing. When they were doing the autopsy, said the guy looked like he was about in his 40s. Very good physical shape, but not a laborer. His hands did not look like a laborer's hand. And then they said actually his feet looked like he might have been a dancer. Right? And they said all the tags on his clothes have been removed.
They were trying to hide the country of origin where the clothes were made? Yeah,
but they did find out later. Now, when they did the poisoning, here they found out, they said we're pretty sure it's poisoning. It wasn't one that turned up in any of their this was 1948. They didn't have all the same, but it wasn't like a common poison. They said they couldn't find any trace of it in his system or in the food that they found in his stomach. They think that it might have been digitalis.
What's that? Or
it's from I believe it's from, isn't it from some kind of orchid, I want to say? That might be totally wrong. Just don't yell at me, but because I don't have time to look at it. Might have been digitalis. Or another one called, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, I think it's called uabane, which comes from an African plant, and they usually use it for arrow poison. So they think that maybe that's what it is. Now, because there was no identification, they made a plaster cast of his face and his head and, showed it around. They took pictures of it, put it in the paper, all this other stuff. Now, initially, some people came forward and said, hey, this is so-and-so, but none of that panned out. It's like one they said, oh, it's this guy, and then that guy turned up at the police station. It's like, no, I'm alive, thanks.
Right, yeah.
But you know what I mean? So, so here was another thing. Now, I think a year after they found the body, because no one identified him, right? Mm-hmm. No one identified him. So a year after they found the body, they found an unclaimed suitcase in the bus station.
Okay.
Which,
this is a year later?
Yeah.
All right.
Which they think belonged to him because in the suitcase, there was a little card with this weird orange waxed thread. And that thread was not made in Australia. And it had also been used to sew up a pocket in his coat. Okay. So they assumed that this was his suitcase. Now, in the suitcase, there were a bunch of clothes, all of which had the tags removed also. There was a shank made from a kitchen knife. There was a pair of scissors that were sharpened. There was a stencil brush, which actually I saw, there's a documentary on YouTube from 1978 about this case. And the guy, the suitcase has now been destroyed, lost, because the case was so long ago. But they still had it in 1978, and they showed it in this, and the guy took everything out. And this guy said that he thought that this guy must have been officer third class, military, Navy maybe, okay. Because he said they were issued these stencil brushes because one of their jobs was to stencil the cargo cases. Because this was a particular kind of stencil brush, I guess. So that was in there. And there was a pair of pants with sand in the cuffs. There was a tie with the name T. Keene written in marker on the back of it. But there was no missing person that corresponded to that. So they don't know if that was a fake name. And also, they found out from the stitching on the clothing that was in the suitcase, the guy was probably American, because they said that a lot of the stitching in the coats, only the United States had that particular type of feather stitching at the time. So they thought he might have been American. Okay, now, so, they found just other regular shit in there and stuff like that. But now, about a year and a half later, a doctor came forward from Glenelg, which they think was the town that this guy came from on the bus, because he was found in Somerton, like I said. And he said that he had found his car in the parking lot, and the window had been open, and he found a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam in the back seat of his car, as if someone had thrown it in the open window. And its last page was missing. And it was a first edition. It was a rare one. It was like from 1859 or something like that. It had been printed in New Zealand. And so the cops matched up, the Tamam Shud, they matched that to the last page. Also in this book was a code, or what looked like a code. It looked like, it's like 5 lines. There's a picture of it. You can Google it. There's a picture of it. And it's 5 lines, and it's just a bunch of random letters. Yeah. And some people think it's a code. No one has been able to crack it. There is, I think there's a couple of graduate students in Australia that are working on cracking it in Australia. There's also a Reddit thread, which I can link to, where some people, I don't know much about code breaking.
They're not going to be able to crack it because the key to that code was a word that he had in his head.
See, that's what some people were saying. They're saying now, if this was that kind of code, then they're never going to be able to crack it.
Like on the number stations.
Right. So, yeah, that might be another thing. So, there's a picture of the code. Now, you may think that this is as weird as this case gets. However, it is not. In the book, along with the code, there was also a phone number. When they called this phone number, they found that it was this woman, a nurse, who lived right near where the body was found. Huh. Now, she said that at one time she had owned a copy of the Rubaiyat. She had given it to a man, what was his name called? Alfred, I think his name was Alfred Boxall, okay? This was in 1945, 3 years before the Somerton Man's body was found. Okay, now Alfred Boxall was in the Australian Army, and I think she had been having an affair with this dude, and she gave him her copy of the Rubaiyat. Now they tracked down, at first they thought the Somerton Man, it's Alfred Boxall, except that dude was still alive too. Okay. And he still had his copy of the Rubaiyat, and it still had its last page. Huh. So... Are you guys confused yet? Because I am. All right. So now the nurse, they actually didn't identify her until 2002. I believe her name was Jessica Thompson. I think her maiden name was Powell. But she was married at the time, and I think, like I said, she was having an affair with this Boxall fella. So here's the weird thing. Now she died in 2007. she had a couple of kids, including a son named Robin. All right. Now, the son, Robin, had a very particular genetic thing with his ear. Because apparently, I didn't know this, but ears can be used like fingerprints. They're like super distinctive and everything. He had a weird thing with his ear and a weird thing with his incisors, which didn't develop, like a genetic thing. Mm-hmm. These two very rare genetic mutations were also evident on the plaster cast they had made of the dead dude. 1% to 2% of the population have these two, and they said the odds of that kid having these exact same two genetic anomalies.
Maybe that was his son?
That's what they're thinking.
Right.
So how the nurse is involved, like apparently like she's dead now, but her kids are still alive. And I think that her daughter said that her mother knew who Somerton Man was, but she never said. So I don't know if she killed the dude, if this Alfred Boxhall dude, if that guy was pretending to be him. Mm-hmm. Now, she was called in the fort in 1948 or 1949 or whatever to look at the plaster cast. And she told the coroner that she didn't know who it was, but the coroner said that she reacted very strongly when she saw it. But then she said, oh, I don't know that dude. So, I mean, that's only his word to go on. But it was his opinion that she did know who it was, and she just said she didn't know who it was.
Weird.
So, like I said, this case is super, super weird, and it's actually super well known. And in Australia, in the past few years, like I said, they've been trying to crack the code that was in the book, if indeed it's able to be cracked. And they also wanted to get the man's body exhumed.
Right.
Because
for
DNA analysis and whatnot. Now, if he was the father of that nurse's kids, it's like, what would that mean specifically? Now, the kids of Jessica said that their mom was a Russian spy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. She must have been a spy.
So, but I don't know, like, how...
Some kind of what they call wet work went down. Where spies were in a relationship with each other, and one had to knock the other one off. I would think it's American KGB and CIA going at it, and it looks like some kind of civilian murder, but no.
Yeah,
it was something about where, because traditionally female spies they were very good. All you do is ask the North Koreans; they say their best spies inside North Korea are women.
Yeah. And
it's because you can... Well, woman can sleep with a guy and find out everything about him.
Well, and women are not perceived as threatening, also, in a lot of cases.
But she was sleeping with him, had his kid, but was still a spy, and then for some reason ended up killing him. He may have figured out that she was an enemy spy. He may have been there to kill her. You don't know.
Ooh, wouldn't that be intriguing?
And maybe she poisoned him somehow. Or she called other Soviet spy friends and they killed him.
Yeah.
It's probably what happened.
I wonder how the poison was administered.
Probably made him swallow it.
Yeah.
Or tricked him into swallowing it.
And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a common poison. It was a very unusual poison. And it was one in 1948 that didn't come up on any tests. The only reason they suspected it was poisoning at first was because of the weird, the way the blood was engorged in his organs.
They're usually not going to use force. They're just going to use trickery.
Yeah.
Tricked him into drinking something or eating something that had that in it.
Yeah. And there's also 3 years before the Somerton Man was found dead, there was another murder in Sydney, and the victim had a copy of the Rubaiyat on his chest. Yeah. So they're wondering if they were using that
as a code book.
Right, if that book was used as a code book.
Yeah.
And
that ties in really good with the first half of the show. That's what happened. She had more than one copy of the Rubaiyat. They were using that book to communicate with their operatives.
And the odd thing about this book that they found on this guy's chest was they said in its where it's printed, like what edition it is.
Yeah.
There's a publisher called Methuen in London, and they had published 5 editions of it. Mm. Except this one that they found was Methuen 7th edition, which wasn't supposed to exist. Because they only did 5. So they don't know if...
Maybe it was a Russian copy of the book.
Yeah, it might have been. Or they don't know if there were like particular editions that were only used as code books. Because if you're going to use a book as a code book, everyone has to have the same edition because different editions are different, or paginated different. The typesetting is different. So the page numbers might not be the same.
Right.
Like all the words might not be on the same page or what have you. So, so they think maybe that was...
I have a feeling that he was probably an American guy, like you said, but he may have also been a Russian spy. He might have been a double agent. He might have been CIA and KGB at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe he was going to defect to Russia to the Russian side. Maybe CIA found out about it. Maybe it was CIA that killed him. May have not been KGB. Yeah. There's no way of knowing.
Yeah.
There's not enough information and no way of knowing.
Yeah. And
there's no way of knowing if they don't even know who he was.
They still don't.
He's definitely somebody in the intelligence agencies. One of the two.
He's got to be because what the fuck else?
Right. And nobody's reporting him dead or missing.
Right. Yeah, no one identified him.
Right.
I mean, people identified.
Yeah, that means they know who he is.
People identified him, but that wasn't who he was.
CIA or KGB knew who he was.
But
he was probably a bad guy. Because they normally don't kill each other. You know, unless they have to.
Unless something really shitty goes down. Yeah.
And then she covered for his death, and she had his kid, so he might have been a bad guy.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's pretty much no way that her son was not his kid, because they said that the chances against that happening would be astronomical because he had the exact same two. What it was like the top of his ear was like smaller than the bottom of his ear, and his incisors were not developed. It's hypodontia or something like that.
She knew who he was.
Only a couple % of the population have that.
She knew who he was, but she couldn't say anything because it wouldn't help him, and it might hurt her and her kids. So
so she just said, "Fuck it, I don't know who that dude is."
It was part of the business.
I don't know who that dude is, but they have pictures of it. I'm actually where the most information about this case is that I found. I mean, there's a Wikipedia page, and there's on various unsolved mysteries cases and stuff like that. But there's one called Sword and Scale, the site, and they have like kind of the most comprehensive rundown of it. And so I think the case is actually still ongoing. Like I said, they're trying to get the guy exhumed, and that's not really going anywhere. People are still trying to crack the code. And actually in 2011, evidently the woman who lived in Adelaide, which was that area of Australia, she produced an ID card with a picture on it, and the ID card the picture looked a lot like the dude in the plaster cast. The guy's name was H.C. Reynolds, and it was a U.S. ID card, which was normally given to foreign seamen during World War II. They said his face looked very similar. And this ID card was was issued in 1918 when H.C. Reynolds was 18 years old. And they said that would have made the timeline about right, because when they found him, he would have been in his 40s in 1948.
A lot of intelligence guys come from navies.
Yeah. But they said the weird thing is that they traced that particular ID when it was issued, but no further records of that man were found.
No,
in the U.S., the U.K., or in Australia.
Whoever he belonged to, he was erased.
Yeah.
And, I imagine if he was Russian or American, who knows, his existence would have been erased from history. Those intelligence agencies don't know him. If you were to try to get the truth out of him, they wouldn't know, because they probably erased all records of him.
It looks like they did. If indeed that's who it is. I mean, the only reason they found this ID card was because a woman had it.
Right.
I don't know, in her attic or something like that.
Just because a guy is an American doesn't mean that he isn't a Russian spy. Just because a guy who is a Russian doesn't mean he isn't an American spy. They'll work for either side.
Yeah, they could be double agents.
Something like that. Or both, yeah. They could be
or triple agents.
Yeah.
Or what have you.
They'll just sell information. He sold information, they killed him. Something like that.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating case. There's a couple of documentaries about it. There was one from 1978, in which they show the original suitcase and all the stuff in it, which has since been destroyed. if you want to see that. And also there's a newer one about the kids that are the grad students' kids. I'm old, I call everybody kids now. But about the grad students that are trying to crack the code. And there's also a Reddit thread where they're trying to crack the code. Also, if you're kind of interested in the story and you want to see kind of a fictionalization of it, the Stephen King book, The Colorado Kid, was loosely based on it, and they made a TV show called Haven from that, which is also kind of based on it. Now, the next murder kind of had some similar aspects to Somerton Man, and this chick was probably also a spy, I want to say. She's best known as the Isdal Woman, because she was found in the Isdalen Valley in Norway. This happened in 1970. Now, this woman was found, it was November 1970, and there was a hiker and two daughters. They were hiking through the Isdalen Valley, which is actually called Death Valley because of all the skiers that die there, which is nice. Huh. And they came across the remains of a campsite. And in the fire, there was a woman's body, which was partially burned, and there was also a big bruise on her neck. Scattered around the body were several pink sleeping pills, 50 of them to be precise. There was an empty bottle of liquor, a silver spoon with the monogram filed off, a packed lunch, some of them say there was a packed lunch, and 2 water bottles that smelled like gasoline. All of her clothes and shoes had the tags cut off, just like Somerton Man. Okay, so these people found this body and they took it for an autopsy. They said that she died from a combination of burns from the fire and from carbon monoxide poisoning. They also found a bunch of sleeping pills in her system, although that's not what had killed her. So when they tried to identify her, they did dental work on her, and they said that the dental work was of a type particular to a South American dentist, because I guess they can tell that because they use different methods in different countries, I guess. Now, some reports say that her fingerprints had been sanded off, and I'm not sure. That might be a mistranslation from the original Norwegian article, because I saw on Wikipedia that someone who spoke Norwegian and English said that actually the original Norwegian article said that just all the fingerprints were wiped off of everything, like wiped off all her stuff. Yeah. So I don't, like a lot of reports...
That sounds more like
Yeah, so a lot of reports say that her fingerprints were filed off, but I'm not sure if that's the case. Now,
that would attract too much of attention to have something.
Right. So I don't know. That's probably a mistranslation. Now, after they had drawn sketches of her, not very good ones. If you can look up pictures, they're not very good sketches. But
was her face burnt? Maybe they weren't sure what her face looked like.
Yeah, it could have been. I don't know. I don't know if I really said because she was like partially burned. I don't know how badly she was burned. But after they published the sketches of her, a hiker came forward and he said that earlier that day, the day she had been found dead, he had seen a woman up in the valley, and he said he noticed her because she was wearing kind of elegant clothes, not like hiking clothes. And he said also she seemed to be scared, and there were 2 big Mediterranean-looking men following her. And he said he passed her, and she kind of opened her mouth at him like she was going to say something, but then she didn't.
Right.
And then she kept on going. Now, like I said, this is just this guy saying that he saw her, so I don't know if that's true or not. But they interviewed a shitload of people, and it came to light that, now I think just like in the Somerton Man case, they also found a suitcase of hers in a train station, in a storage locker. In that suitcase, they found 9 passports with 9 different identities.
Her picture was on them?
Yeah. And a bunch of clothes, all with the tags removed. They all looked like Italian style. They also found a bunch of wigs, non-prescription eyeglasses,
Yeah.
And a bunch of silver spoons, like the ones they had found at the camp, but these ones had monograms on them. And inside the lining of the suitcase, they found 500 German marks and 130 Norwegian crowns. Now, from witness accounts after they published the sketches, a lot of witnesses identified her. Now, she had been moving all around Europe kind of the last months before she died, because a lot of people saw her at various hotels, and she always checked into hotels under different names. A couple people said she seemed watchful or suspicious. At one place, one guest had seen her on a payphone, and she had been speaking in German, and she said, "I'm coming soon," to someone on the other end of the line. That was the day before she died. And so they also in her suitcase, they found a notebook, and it also had a code in it, like a numerical code. Now, some of that has been cracked, and they think that it was her itinerary. So they kind of have an idea of where she went from about the end of March 1970 to end of November when she died.
Where'd she go?
She went. Her first place she went from Geneva to Oslo. Stayed in Oslo using the name Genevieve Lancier. Then she went to a place called, Stavanger? I don't know. I'm not Norwegian. Took a boat to Bergen. Stayed the night at a hotel using the name Claudia Tielt. And she was still using that name the next week. Then she went to Hamburg. And then she went to Stockholm. Then she went to Paris. Then she went to Bergen, Norway. She was always using different names because people remembered her at the hotels and stuff like that. And they had her name in the register, but she always had different names. But all these names corresponded to names that were on her passports, the passports that they found.
I'm going to say right now off the top of my head,
suitcase.
East German spy.
Yeah, see, that's what a lot of people thought too. Now, see, this is another, they said, according to witnesses that had seen her in various hotels over the months prior to her death, she spoke at least 4 languages, including English, German, Flemish, and French. They couldn't figure out where her accent was from, although they did track down, in her suitcase, they found a postcard from an Italian photographer, and they tracked that guy down, and he said, well, I didn't know much about her. I took her out to dinner one night. Mm-hmm. She said she was from South Africa and that she was an antiques dealer. Yeah. And that's what she wrote on some of her. Yeah. And they said pretty much the only distinctive thing about her, they figured her clothes were probably Italian because they were that kind of style at the time. They said she liked porridge with milk because she ordered that at every hotel.
That sounds like an East German.
For some reason, yeah, porridge with milk. So, but they put sketches of her and shit like that, like all over, and she has never been identified. And she's now in an unmarked grave in Norway. And so 45 years, and they still don't know who she was. So
I think she was an East German spy.
Probably a spy.
And she was getting ready to defect. And East Germany was a satellite of Russia. And those Mediterranean men that they're talking about were Russians. The Russians killed her before she defected. That's what I think happened. They tried to make it look like a suicide. Give her a bunch of pills.
Yeah, scattered them around.
And then probably put her head over the fire and threw a blanket over her head and the fire and tried to killed her with carbon monoxide poisoning. They tried to make it look like a suicide, a roughshod suicide.
Yeah.
That's probably it.
Although, honestly, if I was going to make something look like a suicide, I don't think I would go to all that trouble.
It sounds pretty messy, the way they did it.
Yeah.
But they may have been sending a message.
Yeah,
so you got to look at it that
true.
way. They probably could have done it a lot better.
Now,
but they wanted other possible defectors or other intelligence agencies to know that they did it.
That, hey, don't do this shit because this shit will happen to you.
Right, something like that.
Now, is it possible that she was not a spy, but she was like some kind of master criminal, like an international smuggler or something like that?
No, because nobody would have wanted her dead. Think about it.
You don't think?
No, they just would have arrested her. Whoever wanted her would have arrested her.
Yeah. Honestly, I do think she was a spy.
Spy.
She's got to be a spy.
Sure.
And it's so weird the way
She was a spy. She was going to defect. She knew something that she had too much information. They couldn't let her defect, so they killed her.
Yeah. It's super weird because, I mean, it's weird that there are so many parallels between her case and the Somerton Man case.
Yeah.
You know, with the shit in the suitcase and the codes and the...
Yeah, there's a lot of that. They're putting suitcases in storage lockers at bus stations and at train stations. That's pretty common. That comes up a lot.
Yeah.
I guess these operatives remove the labels from their clothes.
Yeah.
That way, if they're ever arrested, their identities can't be defrauded.
Right.
It hinders investigations. They just take all their labels off.
Even though
that would be a giveaway, though. If you don't have any labels, then
that's what I mean. It's like that's what kills me. It's like it's more suspicious to take them off.
They might have been using an older doctrine,
right? Because nowadays, and like I said, even in 1948 in the Somerton Man case, they still knew that the clothes were American from the way the stitching was.
And this is a different time.
Even though the labels were gone.
This is a different time. I mean, now everything's from China or somewhere in the Far East, you know what I mean? So you didn't have to remove the labels, but back in those days, maybe it was...
Yeah, things were more distinctive where they were manufactured.
Where they were made, so it was just safer overall to just remove the labels.
Yeah, I guess so.
That way it could be deniable.
Right.
You could have plausible deniability.
Although the weird thing about, like I said, the weird thing about the Somerton Man case was that, all the labels were removed, except for, there was actually one laundry tag that said T. Keen on it, Kean. But then on the back of his tie, it said T. Keen, Keane. So they don't know if that was actually his name or if they did that to throw authorities off. His identity
might have been his cover name that he used.
Because they couldn't find anyone
to do his laundry.
Name. Right.
Back in those days, people dry cleaned and they did laundry a lot. You know what I mean? I guess washers and dryers in your houses weren't as common back then.
Yeah, so I guess that's hard to think about.
So you had to kind of have some name to tell the laundry people.
Tell the laundry people so you could,
probably all it was.
So, it might have been. Because they couldn't find anybody of that name, regardless. Right. But the case of the Isdal Woman, like I said, they pretty much cracked the code that was in her notebook. It was just an itinerary. But they still have no idea who she was, why she was killed. They don't know what her real name was even, because she was going by 9 different ones.
Actually, in the 70s, they did have laundry in the house. But... maybe they didn't have houses. These are agents and they're moving around.
Yeah,
so
obviously she had been moving around.
They have to use professional laundry services. Maybe laundromats were hard to find, so they were living in hotels.
So they would send them out to be cleaned.
Laundries, just that.
But and actually, I don't know. Like Somerton Man is actually a pretty famous case, but Isdal Woman not so well known. Although it's very, very famous in Norway. It's like their most famous unsolved murder.
We don't know who they are, but they knew who they were. The intelligence agencies knew who they were.
Deep.
Yeah, we don't know who they are, but those intelligence agencies knew who they were.
See, the first time you said that, I thought you meant we don't know who they are, but they knew who they knew who they were themselves, and I was like, did. Well, yeah.
But the intelligence agencies knew who they were, and I would imagine the cops had an inkling that these were intel agents, so they were just gonna go, maybe we should.
That's another thing that I forgot to mention was that in the Isdal Woman case, I think the hiker, let me check this, but I think the hiker that called and said that he had seen her alive, he said that the cop told him, don't worry about it, it's never going to be solved. Yeah. He said that's what the cop said to him. Like I said, it's just his word, but that's what he said.
Yeah. The cops knew.
So the cops must have known who she was.
Well, the cops know what a crime looks like.
Yeah.
And they know the difference between a crime and a hit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when these kind of people, these are not organized criminals doing hits. These are governments doing hits. Yeah. So, you're not going to solve those.
I wonder what she did.
She had information. She was going to defect. She was screwing dudes and finding shit out. And then, she was going to run with the information and rat and go off to the other side. So they killed her. Yeah. Somebody did. One side or the other.
I would not want to be a spy. I don't want to end up like that.
Most of it isn't like that.
No, I know.
No.
I'm not taking any chances, though.
Most of it's boring.
I'm not taking any chances, though.
I think those are exceptions. Those are exceptions to the rules. It's called wet works, you know what I mean? Wet works is killing somebody for intel purposes. Yeah. But that was mostly a Cold War thing. Yeah. They usually don't do that much anymore. That's what they told me. It's my understanding based on, conversations with people. that
various people who
various
will remain
people.
nameless.
Yeah, I knew some spooky characters in my time, but it's my understanding that spies, if that's what you want to call them, spies killing each other is a last resort. That's not normal.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fair enough. I still don't want to do it, though.
Yeah.
I don't want to end up somewhere in some fire with all my teeth knocked out or whatever.
Yeah.
Creepy. So anyway, I guess that's probably... Oh, yeah, shit, we're coming up on an hour, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, it'll probably be more than an hour now that I've... Whatever, I don't know. So,
You're mumbling.
You what?
You're mumbling.
Shut up. You're mumbling.
Okay.
At least we finally got this done. God.
Got it done.
Poor Tom was so sick yesterday. We were going to record this yesterday, and he was so sick.
Yeah, it wasn't feeling good. I'm still kind of sleepy.
You feeling good? Well, you can go take a nap if you want to. It's all right now.
Yeah, you got to go take my old man nap.
Oh, this old man nap. Oh.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up.
All right. So we hope you enjoyed the show about spooky spy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like the show, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is called 13 O'Clock Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and all that other junk.
Yeah, and if you like spy stuff, check out our Angry Gay Pope video that we put up the other day, interpolating Scientology. That's a cool show too.
Yeah, because, man, that shit's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
That Scientology shit.
Scientology's awesome.
If I didn't know, that shit really happened, because I used to work for them and I knew some of them and shit like that. And if I didn't know that all that shit was true, I would think somebody just made that shit up.
And they have their own spy agency called OSA.
That's right,
Office
they do.
of Special Affairs, yeah.
Even though they're kind of keystone cops about it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, who knows? They hire a lot of PIs. Anyway, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, to subscribe and like all our shit, you know how it goes. And then that'll do it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.